Welcome to my teaching learning session. We continue with Unit 2 today of BPCG 172 Youth, Gender and Identity. Speaking of this, I'll be taking care of BA courses for you. I am Sonal Singh Pawar. And we continue with Unit 2, speaking of developmental aspects of youth. As we consider the developmental aspects of youth of adolescent, which was the teenagers, now we as know that youth is a transitioning phase. Speaking of it as transitioning phase, adolescent and adulthood being very closely knitted by 2 to few years are going to be associated to something which is adolescent and early adulthood. So finishing with adolescent, we move to the developmental aspect of youth in this, which is 2.10 adulthood years and 2.11 physiological and physical development of early adulthood years, cognitive development of youth, which will again speak about early developmental years of early adulthood, emotional development of youth, which is again adulthood and their developmental aspects in emotions, and social development and emotional development of the early adulthood. Early adulthood usually is the time where we see people being more stable emotionally, physically, mentally, and also the life stage is defined as from the 20s till 35. So it's a very vibrant stage of life. People are mostly active at this point of time because there is a lot of stability that we see in people now, and they are health conscious. Their health is at a peak at 20s. We all know that we've crossed adolescent. Adolescent is the time of stress and storm. We're always focusing on the fact that we are worried of how do we take care of our body, our needs, our physiological changes. But this point of time as the early adulthood, we are far more stable, far more healthier, more focused as children, and we look forward to other intimate relationships after friendship, which is romance, friendship, and also careers, stable careers, and intimacy for life, which would be childbearing and family again. So, as stated, this year is one of those life stages which is considered to be reliable, considered to be focused, considered to be also considered to be one of the most healthiest and a peak stage of life. Now, starting with the physical development of this stage, as I stated that this is people at their early 20s and 30s are at their peak stages of life. Their health actually touches a peak where they're good of best of their health. They're exercising, they're capable of doing maximum things which their body can endure and it can take care of. So speaking of that, when we speak of physiological changes, the body has completely developed. The body, in terms of changes, in terms of any sort of environmental impacts, have completely changed and become stable. The brain has become stable. By 20s, it is also called that the brain development completes. The neurons that are formed also are complete, which is the brain cells actually reach their topmost time. Also, as explained in the adolescent, brain development is continuing, physiological changes are continuing, but here we are at the prime of our life. Reproductive system, motor abilities, our lung capacity, our physical endurance, body composition is so steady and so stern that the motor abilities and our operating capacities are also at the peak. However, these systems do start slowing down. So, speaking of the same aspect, which is adulthood, when we speak of it, we need to know at the same time these aspects also slow down. So the early 20s and 30s are our peak time, and these time goes on from 30 and above. So 30, as soon we target, some genders lose their strength of working on throughout. We will see some sort of acceleration of body strength moving in the opposite direction. So opposite direction is moving in a direction which is decreasing. So speaking of that, we need to know. However, these systems starts to slow down and gradual decline is seen. And by the mid 30s and later 30s, you will begin to notice that there are signs of aging, which is not only seen on the face. The signs of aging are also seen on their body, in their strength. So you can imagine by the time of 20s, when you were able to run across a street and do not pant at all, a mid 30s would also obviously will have difficulties running across the street steadily. Climbing up the stairs would be a difficulty now. A difficulty, as in, I would not say difficulty, but there would be a decrease in strength with these people. And signs of aging can also be seen in terms of wrinkles on the face, fine lines on the face, and we do become physically a little less active. Also depends upon the human body. If they want to keep themselves healthy, this is one time that discipline and management can be created. So early and middle adulthood is one of those times that we can create, a kind of routine for ourselves, a kind of an active schedule for ourselves, where the signs of aging in terms of our physical composition and body can be taken care of. We need to make sure that our body mass index is managed so that it does not show obesity or completely lean body. We need to have a life which is completely no alcohol, smoke free lifestyle, which should be, I feel, a strategy for an a management skill that today's adulthood should adopt, which is completely smoke free lifestyle. COVID has been such a big example to understand that having a smoke free lifestyle was extremely important. And having a healthy diet, maintaining having regular physical activities is important. Making sure that you weigh yourself regularly, you see your changes, get yourself checked approximately every 6 months, reduce the amount of sugar intake, increase the vegetable eatings that we can do, exercise, do yoga, practice meditation, mindful meditation. All of this should be practiced at this point of time, because as we say, that early adulthood, yes, is the prime time of our life. But as soon as the early adulthood moves ahead, it does show signs of aging. It does show signs where your physical development also move in the opposite direction, in opposite to 20s and to 30s. And it can be managed, solely managed by the early adult. Now, after the physical development, let's talk about some interesting tasks that we need to know that as an adult, what you need to complete. Having Hertz has been a psychologist who has regularly and stably given us tasks for all the life stages. He equally stated that early adults should be achieving autonomy. So that's like one of the first things that it is stated that early adults should achieve, which is trying to establish an opinion and a choice of your own. That suggests that when we speak about you having a choice of your own, that means that you should have the capacity to choose your careers, you should have a capacity to choose your own lifestyles, choose your company, choose the kind of places that you live in. So, indicating a sign of independence. And autonomy is something that by after adolescent, as an adult, should be greatly achieved. Then establishing identity, which is more firmly like knowing, is it your personal self more active, the social self more active? What is your personal identity, which is you being distinct from others? What is your social identity, likes, dislikes, preferences? Your philosophies, your principles for life. Then developing an emotional stability. As speaking that this is a time where we think that adulthood are reliable, responsible, and independent, the entire the entire population supposedly imagines that adulthood after adolescent is far more stable. So we need to have that increasing amount of emotional stability, become more stable, and not only act mature but also with the pattern of showing the signs of maturity, we should also act independent, reliable, and emotionally stable. Also establishing a career, which is extremely important at this point of time, which is having a very independent choice of careers, and then being able to pursue education in the same and further have a long-term relationship and being able to pursue a career in the same. Also finding intimacy is as soon as adolescent and teenagers finishes, we hold a job after a career. The first thing that people start struggling is forming intimacy. Intimacy is the long term relationship. It is not in terms of adulthood, dating, having a heterosexual relationship, beginning of heterosexual relationship. It is not like adolescent. It's far more stable. So it looks forward for a long term relationship, a relationship that can stay for life. Becoming a part of a group in a community. As young adults, you should be a part of community principles that you're really thriving in for. And it's just not about surviving in society. It's something that we need to know. We have to be associated to a community, have an identity so that we're able to thrive in the society. So being able to get involved with groups, show your achievements, or contribute to the society, or contribute to that community in some way or the other is also one of the most important aspects of being adults. Also establishing a residence and a learning of how to manage households. That's the reason we have oftenly seen that adulthood, as soon as they start working and they start holding a stable job for a long time, the first thing that they look forward to is having a residence of their own, which is buying a house, which is extremely important. Not only it is to identify yourself, it is also to give you, the basic necessities of life, which is hunger, thirst, and shelter. Shelter is one of the basic necessities that even adulthood looks forward to, and they should be capable of doing and gaining one. Then learning how to manage household, which is being able to live independently in a household, which is managing your food, sanitation, everything. Then becoming a parent, as soon as intimate relationships are formed, you buy a house for yourself, you pay, or renting yourself in a house, being able to have a household, manage the household in terms of finances, in terms of emotional stability, in terms of how household chores, after we have moved from intimacy to a family development, which is childbearing and becoming a parent, learning how to managing the child, their needs and capacities that the child has, being able to be bared by the parent, which is schooling, education of the children, their physical development, and lastly, making a marital relationship and adjustment to learn to become a parent. Marital adjustment has been always should always be a pattern of life as soon as we form intimacy, and as adulthood, we expect as soon as you get married, the stability is something which is formed. It's an automatic thought to human, and I feel in capacity also. So this completes with the task of early adulthood. Let's come to cognitive development of early adulthood. Knowing that we finished adolescent at the formal development of Jean Piaget's theory was only till formal development. There was something which was even beyond formal operation, which is called the post-formal thought. And uh, one of the most important and crucial point over there is, which is about adulthood, when we go beyond the formal development, which is when we go beyond the abstract thinking, logical thinking, and we go beyond the hypothetical deductive thinking. Adulthood is actually key featurely identified with abstract thinking. It's one of the most characteristic thought process of adults, which is apart idealism, adjustment, everything. They are seen as abstract thinkers. So if you compare a 14-year-old with a 30-year-old, you will find that latter considers not only what is possible, but also what is likely, what can happen. What it's not just about what is possible, but also what can likely be possible, which is something in hypothetically presuming. We are not saying optimistically, we are not associating optimism over here. We are associating the ability to be able to relate to something which is the upcoming, forthcoming times. So a problem comes in, they will not only look forward to what is possible, but also what is likely. This can also happen. So this is what is different from a 14-year-old. A 14-year-old is also a personal fable, is also an imaginary audience, which makes them at times very rigid and idealistic also. So we do not find rigidity in an early adulthood, rather we find a lot of far more abstract thinkers. And Piaget's theory of cognitive development ended with formal operation. Post is this, which is a post-formal operation, which is restricted to adulthood. Even if this thinking is not constituting a separate stage of development, it's still a kind of thinking that we all develop as an early adult. So, which is abstract thinking, we are more practical and realistic. So, post-formal will talk about we are away from the formalization. Now we are working as per the practicality of the world. So we need to be pragmatic in our decisions, in our working. We need to be very realistic. So when we speak about being realistic, it talks about being able to know that what is actually possible and will this be in the long run, being able to be seen the way where the is able, are we able to see this in future happening, and not only for ourselves but also the community that we are a part of, a group that we are a part of. More individualistic, yes, because individual goals are more important here. As a 14-year-old who is more collectivist because they have friends, they're forming friends at that point of time. But here we have individual goals. We need to rear a family, we need to take care of our careers. So we are far more individualistic in various perspectives, no matter if it be family, career, intimate relationship. And as soon as the person approaches late 30s, you'll find a lot of decision changes. They make decisions out of necessity because of prior experiences and are less influenced what the others think. Which I feel people who are watching and listening to this should understand that as soon as the time goes by, as teenagers are so preoccupied what the world is thinking about them, which is the imaginary audience and personal fable, this is the time where the adulthood starts being practical and realistic, and you see them at 35 and 40, they do what is required. They decide what is required, and they do not give a second thought because of other people's opinion. They do not give a second thought because of other people's thinking, their labels. They will do what is required in their life. So, of course, this is particularly true in individualistic areas such as United States, which is very true. US is considered one of the most individualistic country. We will find 30 plus are completely independent individuals over there. They do not pay heed to what other people are thinking, what other people are talking. They are focused on what they want in their life and how do they want in their life. I can equally say that even India is getting that logical, that flexible, and that realistic with adults of 30 and 35. Even adults of 30, 35 are looking forward to what is required, what is possible, what is important, and what is individually correct for them. So, yes, there is individualism which is coming. They are deciding what is right for them, but it's slow and in the process. While at this point of time, we are willing to accept morals, intellectual complexity, because the understanding of the mind has grown so much that we can take care of complex decisions and complexities in life, dialectic that previous stages cannot. So, dilemmatic situation, difficult situation, any problematic complex situation can now be taken care of because we decide as per priority, decide as per realism and practicality, and something which is useful and something which is feasibly possible rather than what others will think, what others will claim, and how others will label. That's completely taken care of in this stage. So that's the reason, if we look back to our stages when we did enough physical understanding, this stage is considered to be one of the most prime stages. Prime in every way is body endurance, body strength, mental capacity, cognitive ability, the ability to think that I am correct and why I am correct. So we know the hows and whys of the world, and that's the reason complex decision, dilemmatic situations are something that, with the process of getting matured, is adjusted and understood. This finishes with cognitive development of early adulthood, and these are some features that we look on to again. Piaget just gave us four stages. There was an extension which is called the post-formal. Post-formal is identified as abstract, practical, flexible, and dialectic, and characterized by the problem finders. Yes, these people are problem finders. That's why as soon as they become parents, they are someone who are able to support their children because they know it all at one point of time. And they're more open to decisions and ideas, less concerned with what other people are thinking, what is right and wrong. They're more concerned with what is right for them and what is right, wrong for them. So this is like the few features of post-formal thought, which is evident in the early adulthood. Let's move ahead to social emotional development. One of the most important developments that we will look forward to, Erik Erikson is the psychologist who has given psychosocial stages of development starting from 0 going on till 60. We discussed the same as identity formation in the last stage of adolescent, and it is maintained that individuals develop psychosocially. Nevertheless, we will never, we will not negate this idea that we are not social beings. We are completely social beings. So when we are completely social beings, I feel we should understand the fact that there are difficulties in adolescence of understanding the world in terms of deciding for their career, achieving a virtue of career management, having an identity of their own. So, social cultural development is equally important. This is what Erik Erikson stated, that we are as humans, we are social animals. We will only grow as soon as we interact with other people. We seek intimate relationship, interact every day. So here what the concerns come into play is, it is stated that after identity formation versus role confusion, we come to intimate relationship, which is intimacy forming, or something which is stated as isolation. So we have intimacy or isolation. If we are able to be having an intimate relationship, we look forward for marriage, developing a family. And it is stated that this stage of life is not a very easy stage of life because at times there are marriages which are struggling. The early adult can go through differences of opinion with their partners, at times more likely can go through divorces with their partners. Marriages can be abolished. Also, at times when people who just marry at 19 and 18 due to some circumstances that could actually ruin the development of early adulthood. Also, some difficulty that the early adulthood can experience is marrying really too early to people with dissimilar age, personality, intelligence, cultural aspects, and attractiveness. So we need to be, when we talk about intimacy versus isolation, this is not even something that you start dating, fall in love, and you get married. That really doesn't happen. The basic virtue is love. The basic virtue is falling for two people. But we need to take care of the fact: is there any is there any similarities in thoughts, ideas, and in terms of the age, in terms of the culture, the physical attractiveness, your personality, and intellect? Are these factors are also aligned? If it is, it leads to intimacy being formed for a greater time. After marriage, can look for family development, but dissimilar ages, differences in the intellect can lead to divorce, at times lead to separation. And if it happens after children, it could lead to difficulties for children also. And it is stated by researchers that children who are coming from separated and divorced family tend to develop more mental disorders and diseases. So this is something which is also increasing in our part of the country, where we find that children coming from disturbed and dysfunctional families are having more chances of developing mental diseases. So this needs to be taken care of. So first is marriage and family, which is intimacy. And if they are not able to become intimate, they go get into something which is isolation. Isolation can be before, and isolation can also be after. Before isolation is not finding a partner at all, which is not finding that virtue of love. And you can be questioned that, will I be ever loved? Will I always be alone? So these are simple questions. When it happens after falling in love and after marriage, this could be that this set of relationship is not with me, we are not two different people. How do we take care of children? So the kind of isolation that we have is way too different, living separately, all of that. So such alternatives to marriage today has been live-in relationships, which is living together, cohabitation, which has started in recently, has also been legal in some parts of the country in India, and it cohabitation is becoming very common. Cohabitation is an operational term used for live-in relationships. And in 1997, the Census Bureau estimated that 4.13 million unwed couples actually live together in the United States. And if we compare it to India, India does not have that much of capacity. They might be staying and living together, but has not, mention it as living relationship to the to the outer society. They mention it as sharing the apartment to manage their finances, to manage their household, while they are educating themselves and coming from different parts of the country. So there is no acceptance yet. So we are not recording that in India. Also, your work and career choices also impacts your socioeconomic status, but also friends, political value, residential location, childcare, job stress. These are another things that comes in early childhood as social and emotional development. We are greatly suffering from financial stability, for financial stability. Residential location where you're staying needs to be appropriate, correct, not appropriately, uh, good for not only you, but also for your partner, but also for your children. Also, while your income should be important not only for longevity, but also it should be feasible for everybody, suiting everybody. Which is this is the time people start saving. There is achievements, there is recognition, there is satisfaction, challenges, security. There is threat, a feeling of threat which is coming. And in the model cultures of many nations, careers of both spouses and partners frequently must be considered in making choices, which has been recent changes. We do find now that the women capacity is being educated, and one of the biggest reason, which is such a good thing, that the women capacity is being educated, and because of that education, we do see dual earners in the house. And because of that, there is the luxury which is increasing in society. The standards are increasing. At the same time, the amount of stress that is coming into the family is also increasing. The children are living alone. If their grandparents are not there, nannies are not there. Ideally, nannies should not be considered as a emotional support, but they are living alone. They are being managed on their own. They come home on their own. They manage their life, their homework, their schedules, their school education. To 50% of the day, they manage it alone. So these are some of the struggles in social emotional development and challenges that the early adulthood experiences. And one of the biggest stage given by Erickson was intimacy versus isolation. One of the most important that we should accomplish by accomplishing the virtue of love. This completes with social emotional development. Let's move to Levinson theory of stages of adult life. Levinson had given us stages of adult life where he stated that he suggested the periods of transition lasted about 5 years, and periods of settling down was about 7 years. So in the adulthood stage, we do have a transition time according to Levinson, where 5 is the transition stage, 5 years, 7 years is the settling down stage. The ages presented below, which we will be discussing, are based on the life of the middle class person. So we are dividing into classes. The class that we speak about is a middle class, which more than the average population of our country occupies, which is a 30-year-old. Think about how does this transition and settling happens today in our time. So let's take an example: early adulthood, 17 to 22, 25, leaving home, leaving for entering new career choices, making their career, holding a job, completing their education. Then comes, see, that's like 5 years, transitioning states. It can also be 20 to 25. If we want to make changes in the early adulthood, if it's not 17 for the population, we take it 19 today, we can take it 19 to 25. Then entering adulthood completely, which is 22 to 28. It can also be 25 to 30 today, which is committing to an occupation, finding, defining goals, which is finding a job of your liking, of your, job of your likability, job of your interest, defining goals, finding intimate relationships. And then comes the transition, which is 30, which could be 30 to 35, could be 28 to 33, as I was mentioning. It talks about reevaluation of those choices, perhaps making modification or changing one's attitude towards love and work. So this is again transitioning. Every 5 stage we find different goals which are happening according to Levinson. Then comes the settling down, which is the longer stage, which is 7 years. It can be 33 to 40, it could be 35 to even 42 and 43. This is reinvesting in your work, in your family, which is achievements in the family, which is achievements in work, which is promotions, it could be appraisals, and in family, it could be changing the stability and stance, which is holding up a committed family, moving towards childbearing, and involving yourself in community. Not only you as a single individual, but also your partner, also your children moving towards school. So this is like that settling time period that we get where we start reinvesting ourselves. 33 to 40 people are married here, some people are getting married, some people are rearing families. So it's a mix of all that. Then we come to again the transitioning periods, which are 5 years. So which is midlife transition. This is the time the midlife is about to hit all of us, which is 40 to 45. This is again reevaluation of commitments. You just check yourself, am I saving, my finances are good or not. At times these could be very dramatic if there are children moving to boarding schools. You plan at the time of 8th, 9th and 10th of your children that you need to be giving them to boarding schools because you have shifting residences. You keep shifting and you feel your child needs a safe and secure base. You put them to boarding schools. Also giving expression to variously ignored talents. This is like one of those times at 40, 45, 46 that we look forward to something in terms of aspiration, new choices, learning, reading, cooking, or probably indulging in an activity. Feeling of more, that there is more a sense of urgency about life and its meaning. Urgency in terms of saving, looking forward. What is impending? What all can be done? My priorities in check. So these are things within this 5 years after we have the settling time comes in, and that's the 45 to 50, which is the middle, which is committing to new choices made, which is whatever changes that you've made in your career, savings that you've done, you stick to that. You make sure that you are a part of it and you do not leave it. You make sure that you are able to stick to them. Make sure your children are having a regular routine. Your children are able to bear the changes. Making sure everyone's energies and commitment towards the family are same. So this is completely the middle age where everything is checked on, urgency is checked on. This is something that I can look forward to and can do. And at the same time, this is one time that you are committing to all the new choices that you've made as a 40 to 45, or it could be 43 to 48, and now from 48 to 53, you look forward to be committed to it. So Levinson's theory was very interesting if you look forward to it. 5 years of transition and 7 years of settling stage. And settling stage is a stage where you're having children. You're enjoying that stage of, relaxing, seeing your children grow and enjoying that time. And it is something where you tend to make dramatic changes also necessary, which is such sudden shift of residence, buying a house in between or having a child. So many things are achieved. According to Levinson, these transitions are 5 years because that's the time, that's the amount of time that we can stick to something. That's the amount of time our body can stick to a career choice. You made a career choice, you want something next, you want a committed relationship. You want a committed relationship, you want a family, you want marriage, you want marriage. After that, you want to settle down with work, start your saving, let your family grow. That's the time commitments have started being made. You start getting involved in family, you have social circles being very vibrant. You showcase yourself to be settled and adjusted in the society and in the community. And as the settling time gets over, again that 5 years of transition starts. It's a beautiful theory of Levinson to understand the adult stages in the forms of transition and moving from adolescent to the midlife transition. This completes Levinson with a little diagram where it supports, which states child and adolescent, we come to early adult transition, entering the adult world, we have 30 age transition, settling down is 7 years, then a midlife transition, and entering the middle adulthood. This completes with Levinson's periods of theory, one of the theory which is only for adult life, which Levinson made sure only defined the adult life. Let's move ahead after the social emotional development to another aspect that we cannot miss, which is Sternberg's theory or triangular theory of love, and it was developed in the 1980s by Robert Sternberg. Robert Sternberg is a psychologist who was working for intelligence. He first started his work with the triarchic theory. So if you listen, you'll be able to associate triarchic theory of Sternberg, which spoke about contextual, experiential, and componential intelligence, that we have the ability to shape, select, and adapt the environment, and that's how our intelligence is achieved. Similarly, when we speak about intelligence, he gave a theory of triangular theory of love. So this is an important concept. The reason for that is that as soon as we achieve intimacy, this is as a virtue that needs to be achieved by early adulthood. And that's how the stages and transition of Levinson will be achieved. So if you are able to achieve this virtue or understand this concept, you'll be further be able to transition 5 years as per the Levinson theory and achieve all the targets and all the having earths, stages and tasks of life. So speaking, Robert Sternberg's three components of love was, in Sternberg's theory, the concept of love is a triangle. So it's made up of three, components. Some of these are types of love that are focused between love between two people in a romantic or a sexual relationship. But these types of love also apply to other forms of interpersonal relationship. So we are not restricting it to just heterosexual kind of a relationship. We are also restricting it to the kind of love that we have for others. So there were three components. You also have this, which is intimacy, there is passion, and there is commitment and decision. Yes, we have this triangle of love, which also makes the format of love as a virtue being achieved very strong, which is intimacy is the feeling of closeness, the connectedness, the bonding, the similarity, which does not let the two people let that bond move away. The intimacy is both. Remember, when we talk about intimacy, intimacy ideally is always considered to be physical, but it's social, emotional also, and physical also. Social emotional intimacy is a kind of intimacy that is speaking about closeness, proximity, and sexual dependency on one another, being comfortable with one another. And emotional intimacy is being bonded, being understood, being connected all the time, knowing what is right and how my partner is going to make me feel, or I am going to make him or her feel at this particular aspect. So that is something which we speak about as intimacy. Also, then the next that we come down to as another second component, it's called passion. Passion involves just which is feelings and desires, which keeps your intimacy intact. So your proximity should be facilitated by passion. So people who are, just casually saying that we are dating, well, ideally we are not looking forward to intimacy and jumping to passion. Today's teenagers do that. That's why adolescent is so different from adulthood. Adulthood always moves from closeness to connectedness, from being bonded, being understood by one another, to moving towards something which is feelings, that desires, that sexual intimacy, not being able to be comfortable with anyone else in terms of sexual consumption except one another. So that feeling of attraction being intact is passion. Then we come to the last, which is decision and commitment. After we are able to feel connected, being bonded, being able to associate to one another, and being able to consume to one another, we are able to commit and decide. We are able to involve the feeling of moving ahead, which is like the goals which are there, which talks about being able to move ahead from one another. So that's something which comes with decisions and commitment. So speaking of that, this is the three, the triangle of love. And I feel if an adulthood is able to achieve all of these three, the virtue of love is taken care of. And equally, at the same time, The psychosexual stages of intimacy versus isolation. Intimacy is achieved. People who feel isolated will eitherly looking forward for just passion, directly jumping to commitment, which is moving and meeting people and wanting to commit and not exploring the fact of intimacy and passion with the others. So this completes with the three triangle theory of Robert Sternberg in the 1980s, and the components of love as the image depicted. Let's move ahead. Speaking of the third unit now, as we have finished the understanding of our adulthood, remembering that adulthood is the prime stage of life, remembering that adulthood will always stay the most stable and have to achieve that by their sense of physical attribute, emotional attribute, and their sense of decision making. Finishing that what is youth? We understood youth from adolescent to adulthood as a transitioning stage. So now moving to unit 3, which will speak about the social and psychological perspective on identity. So now we will dwell into identity as a concept. As we did youth, now we move to something which is identity. Now, what is identity to us? And what are we going to speak about in this? We are going to explore the introduction, understand the concept of identity, understand identity as a paradox, and identity, what is it as a paradox, and the youth and development, the social basis of identity, and the social psychological perspective of identity and family as a context of human development. This will speak also about sibling relationship, what are their role in our lives, intergenerational relationship. We will also talk about patterns of intergenerational relationships here, and youth autonomy and relatedness. So let's start with what is identity. See, identity, what is self? Self is a totality of experience. Self is totality of feelings, thoughts, emotions, and identity encompasses the memories, the experiences, the relationships that create that sense of self. So once your totality of experiences is formed, you will put it and portray it to the world in form of identity. So if you have a back of self, a sense of self, your identity will be reflected. So this is an amalgamation of a steady sense of who one is over time, and has new facets are developed, which is incorporated one's identity. New facets could be new skills, could be new learning, new identities, new achievements. It could be new statuses that you add on. Calling it the identity paradox, which is an organization's ability to change uh, from a changeless foundation. Taking this approach to leadership is a secret to stay relevant to no matter how the change is going from the outside world. So, what is trying to say? We're trying to explain you what is an identity paradox. So, this is the ability from changing to not changing, which is there might be changes happening inside, but that change should not be evidently visible outside. So identities do have a lot of changes happening inside, but you would not be able to understand that does the person as a persona change? Does their personal social identity change? We don't get to know that. And there might be a lot of skill development, a lot of changes happening in the internal part. That's what is identity paradox. So identity paradox, first what we discuss is where the identity meets society. We need to know identity is used as a social phase. How one perceives oneself amongst others, the self getting a value, which is the sense of who am I and what am I. The who am I and what am I is defined, that gives you identity, a personal or a social probably. So identity meeting society is trying to tell us that yes, we are changing form. The paradox actually tells us yes, we are changing form. There are so many internal changes that you might be experiencing. You've shifted places, you're holding different jobs, but on the outer world you look stable, you look learning like always, and you look as comforting and friendly. But there are so many learning skills, so much of adaptation which is happening on the internal part of you, and which is making changes in your acceptance of you and making changes in your acceptance of who you are and what you want to be. But in the outer, no matter how many changes that you have in the society in terms of the kind of community group that you join, the kind of social groups that you join, the kind of jobs that you're getting into, the outer sense of self, which is visible as a social identity, remains the same. So we need to know yes, identity is dynamic, but the second point, it is also contingent. Contingent is who you are, you capture in different context, which is as a self, you talk to one people, then you talk to multiple people, you go for a workshop, you take a seminar, you greet and address multiple people. So as you put self in different context, self is changing. But remember, it is equally stable. What you are remains the same, but how do you present it to the people changes according to the context, which is your shape will remain the same, but your qualities inside will differ, which is you are spatially and temporally changing. Spatially is contextually moving from one place to the other, and temporally, which is your temperaments will change, but you as a sense of self remain the same. So identity implies again continuity and coherence, which is there is an integration of diverse involvement, which is very true. From daily morning to evening, we can identify adulthood as experiencing this. In the morning, you join work, speak to 5 people, then you speak to another 10, then you address another 50 at your workplace, take a seminar, take a workshop. Did you realize that identity is meeting society, which is your identity is a reflection of the society that you're part of. It is molding you. It is changing the kind of value that you hold. But at the same time, it's dynamic and contingent, which is what you are and who you are doesn't change. But how do you do it in different style is dynamic. Your identities are both spatial, which is moving to a space, and temperamentally shifting, and shifting. Suggesting that it is integrating. It is learning on an everyday, getting involved with so many people and integrating as a multiplicity of identities. You learn a skill, you at the same time, while you learn a skill, you learn adaptation. You learn to probably be with other people, not one but 50. You learn to address. Your social identity is now just not one aspect but multiple aspect, which is you can speak not only to one gender but multiple gender, multiple ethnicity that you've addressed, and you can take care of their concerns. So it's a combination, and once you're involved with so many combination, the multiplicity of identity is reflected. So simultaneously, remember, it's all cohesive and multiple. Identities are dynamic, are stable, are multiple, and cohesive. This is what an identity as a paradox trying to tell us. It is what it is and it looks different. So it looks that it's changing, but it is what it is, which is it remains the same all the time. This completes with identity as a paradox. Let's move to youth and identity development, which is almost the similarity, which we'll speak about. The psychosexual stages that comes again. So we give it a quick read here. This talks about identity formation. So it begins from the ego of forming an identity, according to Erik Erikson, at the age of 12 to 18. As an identity development, identity is developed at the age of 12 to 19 or 18. The stages, identity versus role confusion. The major question is, who am I? The virtue, which is fidelity, which is being stable to understand who you are and achieve who you are and what you want to do. And what is the important event? It happens within social relationships. Remember, people who are able to achieve identities are very solid, forming a career, doing their education very nicely, strong-headedly, pursuing that path without any confusion. But at the same time, people who are confused are not able to identify themselves in a social scenario. These teens are confused, insecure, unstable. They get into risky sense of self, which is getting into wrong experimental behavior, which could be taking alcohol, drugs, promiscuous sexual activities, getting into wrong sexual activities. So here the triangular self will not be achieved for an adult because we are so confused. We want to do 10 things at a time and not realizing what is for us and what is our identity. So according to Erik Erikson, this process of stage is extremely important for a strong sense of identity. Once this is formed as a youth, there would be further things which will be formed for the adulthood. So this was Erik Erikson's psychostage of development, identity versus confusion, fidelity, and it answers questions like, who am I? A very important event is social relationship at this point of time, as we are social animals. Let's move ahead. Now we come to something which is the social basis of identity. Speaking of social basis, let's go one to one. We have two kinds of identity. One is personal. So speaking of the personal identity, always remember we have a personal kind of identity, which is going to be associating us with something which is making you different from the other. It could be your name, it could be your characteristics. I'm tall, my name is this. I'm strong, my name is this. So anything that differentiates you with the other is personal. Social identity is you being affiliated to a social group. It could be a community, cultural, it could be a school group, it could be a college group, it could be a band college group, music band group, all which is social identities. And what are the different, what comprises of social identity? Race, sexual orientation, gender, ethnicity, ability, age, religion, and socioeconomic conditions. Starting with age, age is a core identity. It's keep changing throughout life. We have tasks according to it. We have virtues to achieve according to it. Some ages are privileged, some ages are stable, some ages are completely grouped by stereotypes. Then we come to ethnicity, something which is more cultural origin of the families we grow and are born with. They have morals associated, they have cultural tradition, food, language associated. So we're born with an ethnicity, I feel. Then comes the race. Race is a genetic feature of a person which talks about the color, identifiably the color. And then we come to gender. Gender is male and female. It's different from sex. Sex is biologically determined. Gender is culturally determined, which is being a male and female, which is culturally determined with the passage of 4 years by getting gender roles as per your sex. So those are gender. So feeling masculine and feminine is gender. Being a boy and a girl is sex. Then we come to something which is sexual orientation, refers to physical and romantic attraction of a certain sex. Then is socioeconomic status, which divides us into classes and classes. Work class divides the masses into classes, which is middle, lower, and high. Today, we have various stratification on the basis of job, food, preferences, localities, higher class, middle class, lower middle class, and then we have lower class. So these are different socioeconomic conditions where divides us with race. So these are some which comprises of the social basis of our identity. So our identity doesn't walk alone. Identities walk with all of these perspectives together. Now let's start with and continue it in later classes and have an understanding of what is the social psychological perspective of identity. How do we see it psychologically and socially? So let's understand it in terms of the social parameter. Social interactionism was a social psychologist theory at a micro level. So it is a micro level theory that focuses on meaning attached to human interaction, both verbal and non-verbal, and to symbols. So here we talk about importance of interaction, which is happening both verbally. Verbal is something which is obviously written and spoken speech. Non-verbally is gestures, eye expressions, nodding, etc. And symbols are could be anything: the light, the fan, the tree, the fish, anything. It could be symbols of any kind. Is believed to be the way in which the people make sense of the social world. So there are times that there are symbolic interactions, interaction which are based on verbal communication, non-verbal communication, and at times those symbols. Also, this was given by Charles Horton Cooley. He's the same person. Cooley is the person. He gave this concept by when he introduced looking at the glass self. He stated in 1902 to describe how a person's sense of self grows out of his interaction with others, and he proposed that there are threefold processes. See, this is something that we all have to agree. Yes, we ourselves do grows out of with the interaction that we have with the environment. So there are threefold processes. With this interaction gives us the sense of self. We see how others react to us, which is so true. Most of the time we say out things on the basis and on the way that we want to know how others are reacting to us. So we behave also at times to know how others are reacting to us. We interpret that reaction typically as positive and negative, and we develop a sense of self based on those interactions. So that completes with something which is a threefold that tells us how this sense of self grows up, out of the interaction we have with people. First, the way you your behaviors to check the reaction of other people. We interpret negative and positive, and we do it. The first thing that we do is to label it. It's positive and negative. Then we develop a sense of self based on those interactions. So, what do we come out on the basis of what was positive, negative? How did the person react to me? And we develop a looking glass. This is an archaic term for mirror. Cooley theorized it as we see ourselves when we interact with others, which is so true. We're able to have a complete view of ourselves by the end of the day. How do we label ourselves by the end of the day? Confident. When we had confident interaction with others, when we had a great day with others, when we label it as a positive interaction as the second fold, and at the same time when we got reaction from others which was fruitfully positive. So that completes as something which symbolic interaction, a very beautiful concept which I feel you all can just see through on your own. That yes, we do have a looking glass self, and we judge it on the basis of how people are reacting to us, how people are interacting with us, and how do we label them in positive and negative. So Completing, we come to another theory before we end our class today. This is the social identity theory by Tajfel. One of the most famous theories that we have of Tajfel began by defining what are identities with regard to social group, such as identification, work to protect, and Gloucester self-identity. So this theory of self-identity was given in regard to social groups and social stratification. When we were stratifying groups, so how do you identify yourself? On the basis of group that you're a part of. So the groups could be social class, it could be football team, it could be community group, it could be a religious group, it could be a spiritual community. Like today, a lot of individuals are just following way of living. It's a spiritual way of thought, and people have those groups associated. So that's like a group in which people belong, and that becomes a source of pride and self-esteem to them. So a lot of time people say, I have a mentor in my life and my mentor is giving me this. There's such sense of life and security and esteem that comes from that. So group gives us a sense of identity. Why? Because it gives us security, sense of belongingness to the social world. Then we divided the world into them and us, which is based through a process of social categorization. So we divide them and us. So we divide the categorization as there's a category them and there's a category us. We put our people into them and we put ourselves into us. So Tajfel proposed stereotyping, which is people putting others into groups, and that's how he said social categorization came into existence. Once we started putting people, okay, I am from this community group, so it's us, and they are coming from that, so they are them. So that's how stereotyping began, putting people into categories and groups, and based on normal cognitive processes and the tendency to group things together. In doing so, we tend to exaggerate two things: the difference between the groups and the similarities between the same groups. So we do exaggerate when we are a part of the same group. We will say, "Oh, we are same because we have same values, same ideas, same thought process. We are achieving." How they are different from us? They don't achieve. They are not a bigger group, not much of belonging. So the difference and the similarities within the group is something which is exaggerated. This is known as in-groups and out-groups. That's how in-groups and out-groups happen. And these in-groups and out-groups are also very important to our lives, because the kind of in-group that you're a part of gives you a sense of self, a positive, secure sense of self. So that's how, both the theory, if we see, if you go back to the symbolic interaction, which again talks about how do you see yourself after interacting with people, and after communicating, getting label from them that the interaction was positive or negative. And that's by the three folds, looking at the glass perspective happens and a sense of self is formed. Similarly, in the Tajfel concept, also the same thing happened. We defined our own identities with regard to the group that we're a part of. Again, it's happening through the interaction. So, a common thing that we see, interaction is the common thing, identification and interaction. So, that justifies symbolic interaction. Symbolic could be, when we speak about here, it could be verbal, non-verbal, and symbol, so we can interact. So, it's taking care of everything. So, beautiful theory telling us how does that self-image and self as an identity is formed. Hope the class was interesting today. And we spoke about youth and gender, something which is the driving force of our country, something that takes us through and through in the world. And understanding how this gives us an identity, which could be personal to person and social, which is something which we all relate differently. Some people relate it to the kind of group that they're attached to. Some people define their social identity on the basis of authority that they get, achievement that they get, labels that they get. And at times, some people on the basis of belongingness that we did. So the kind of pride that gets associated to the class that you are a part of. So, people being a part of their family do say we have a group, we have a long chain of family, a lot of cousins, we are a very united, knitted family. So that's again a sense of pride, a sense of esteem, a sense of security that comes to them. That's what categorizes us from other people, and we label the others as them, and we label ourselves as us together because of that pride, because of that belongingness, because of that togetherness. And that's the reason we exaggerate the similarities and we tend to exaggerate the differences from the others. This completes at least social identities theories today. Hope it was good, and we will continue with Marcia's identity achievements in the next. Hope it was understandable. Thank you.